top 10% and the bottom 90% in terms of dollars to spend on brands. Now, there's 100 other statistics you can quote for this. In the 1960s, a CEO made about 20 times the average salary of their average salary of their employee, the CEO made 20 times, now to 300 times. There's all sorts of metrics that you can use to measure this gap here. But this is a big concern to mall developers and to brands that are sort of stuck in the middle, because economists talk about like a mountain rising up, and you're going to roll down one side or the other. You're either going to be in the 90 or you're going to be in the 10. It's very difficult to stay perched on top of that mountain anymore, and it's going to get increasingly more difficult. And so if you're building a mall now, you pretty much have to make a decision. Is this going to appeal to the ultra-rich here, and we're going to have premium brands with all sorts of very high-touch concierge services? Or is this going to be a bargain mall for the masses, and we're going to engineer it that way? The malls that are sort of stuck in the middle and the brands that are stuck in the middle are the ones that you are hearing about going out of business each year. So this is happening and accelerating. Generational change. I'm going to have to talk to you about millennials and how this is a different group of people than we've ever seen come through before. The values that these kids have are completely different from the values that are programmed into every one of our generations. And so this is changing the way in which brands have to tell their stories in order to connect with those people. And now this is rapidly accelerating because millennials are now moving into purchasing power as the baby boomers are retiring, and so the generations are shifting. And it's causing all sorts of changes in employment and brand storytelling and values and everything else. And then massive disruption and redistribution of employment education. This is a massive one here, and I think this is probably the one that's talked about the least. With the rapid increase of technology and computing power, things like artificial intelligence are creating the ability to do tasks that were typically only available to humans. So in the same way that a lot of our manufacturing jobs and car assembly and things moved to robots, and that there was some unemployment that was attached to that. Now, white-collar jobs are being replaced by robots and by machine learning. If you're a doctor that reads mammograms, there is about a 20% error rate in identifying the correct kind of breast cancer in that course of treatment. There is now a computer program that can read a mammogram and it has a 0.04% error rate. And it can tell on a microscopic level that specific time and chart out a course of treatment that is more effective than the doctors that went to 8 years of med school and incurred all that debt to do that. And that computer program does not have to take a day off, it doesn't call in sick, it doesn't sexually harass coworkers, it creates a lawsuit. There's all sorts of things that make this a better go-around, right? The same thing is happening in law, where whole wings of mortgage companies are laying off the groups of people that used to assemble all that massive stack of documents when you buy a home. The last 4 or 5 contracts for my business were written by a computer that wasn't available anywhere else. This is water bottles and shirts and other cool stuff. Not available in any Nike store or any Nike website. And the only way you can get it out of these vending machines is by using your fuel band and the steps that are on there to cash it in. So they put up cameras to watch the engagement around these things, and people would arrive and they would see something they want, and they have all this video of people running in place in order to hit enough steps to like hit the button so the shirt pops out. So then when you show up to your runners group that next week and they're like, "Oh, cool shirt, where'd you get it?" "Oh, it came out of vending machine. I had to run 10 miles to get it. You don't have a fuel band, you're not cool enough." Like, it's something they can't get access to. You have access to by being part of the family that has a fuel band, right? So, transparent. Millennials are big on I've got to feel good about the things I'm buying. I've got to know it has good impact in the world. Everlane, this is a website that goes overboard. This is every piece of clothing that is up there on Everlane. You can see the factory that's made in. You can see the people interviewed that work in that factory and about how their lives have changed. You can see people in the village that don't work there talking about the impact that this factory has had in the area. So once you buy that shirt, you feel really good that you've helped this entire village in the Philippines to have a different destiny. The experiential. This is obviously what we build our business around. If you go to Carvana, which is a chain of dealerships across the South and Southwest. Does anybody have a Carvana in their town? Okay, where are you from? Nashville. Okay. When you go to buy a car, you show up to pick up your car, they're going to give you one of these big coins, you're going to put it in the slot, and you're going to stick it in, and your car is going to come out of a bubblegum vending machine. Now, I don't have to tell you that 100% of the people who get a car out of a bubblegum vending machine have their phones out videotaping it. And so when they show up to work the next week, like, "Oh, Cheryl, did you get a new car?" Like, "Yep, it came out of a vending machine. Let me show you, watch this." right? I don't know what the surcharge on top of just a normal car buying is in order to do this, but let's just say it's in the gajillions of dollars to build a car vending machine, right? We can agree on this. This is not any different than walking on a car lot and buying it. You're paying for an experience. Now this, I would argue, is borderline gimmicky, but the fact remains that they're opening up these as fast as they can do them because lots of people want to pay to have their car come out of a vending machine. So this way of differentiating this car lot from all the other car lots and the amount of money to do that is important. And then be immersive. Now, you guys have DSWs where you are from. So DSW, we're lucky enough to have them based in Columbus, Ohio. They are an incredibly innovative company, and they are pushing the bounds to take over not just the place where you buy your shoes, but they're going to take over your entire shoe world. So they are starting to open up pedicure salons inside the stores in order to take care of your toes. So that when you buy your new shoes, they're doing shoe repairs so you can bring your shoes back and extend the life of them. They're doing shoe storage for people in urban areas. Right about now, you'll be packing up your didn't have anyone to fight the battle, and here's why. So the first Iraq War, I'll tell you the story to close on here so you know what to look for. I was in 8th grade when the first Iraq War broke out, and the teacher said, I want you to pair up into partners, and I want you to make a diorama in a shoebox here of some scene from the war, of some way in which your life is affected by the war. You have a week to work on this and bring it back in again. 28 people in the class. I partner up with my friend Kurt Knowlton, who is a very kindred spirit. So everybody else goes and they start working on, they all get a shoebox, and they start building out their shoebox. Well, Kurt and I decide that this war is too important and too significant to be combined to a tiny shoebox. We need something on a much greater scale. He and I were both into model rocketry at the time, and if you remember, Scud missiles launching and Patriot missiles launching to intercept was the story. So you get a giant model rocket. This is going to be the Scud, and then we tie a 100-foot clear floss to a tiny rocket that's 100 feet away, and that rocket's hollow. And so we tell the teacher, we let everybody present their dioramas, and we're like, hey, if we could all walk outside the door here, our experiment is set up outside. So the teacher reluctantly takes the group outside, and it's set up, and so we're explaining, the ability to knock down these Scud missiles is what's going to keep our allies safe. It's super important. So Kurt Knowlton hits the button, and the big rocket takes up, and about 2 seconds later, the string catches, and the little rocket, and they go high up in the air and disappear up out of sight. The teacher's like, I have to say, boys, this is really, I'm amazed that you went above and beyond here. What you do not know is that Kurt and I had packed that first rocket full of explosives. And so once it got about 2,000 feet in the air, it exploded in a giant ball of flame that, filled the sky over the school. Because the story is not complete until the Patriot gets the Scud, right? It doesn't disappear into unicorn land. We have to show the explosion. So she is in the middle of just really being caught off guard and great, and then she hits the deck we're under attack. I don't have to tell you the amount of trouble we got into and the number of ways we did it. But when I am building businesses and when I am launching new lines of business thinking, I'm sure the other 26 kids in my class have awesome jobs, and I had a lot of successful people. They've all gone to be lawyers and doctors and all kinds of things, because they love to be told you're going to build this in a shoebox, it's due on Friday, and they execute it perfectly, and they deliver it on time, and those people would be a mess at entrepreneurship. And if I had to be at their desk at 8:15 to move the TPS reports from this pile to that pile, I would be unemployable. I wouldn't make it a day there. And so sometimes your most difficult students, they're just bad kids, but then separate from that, if